It's okay. Speak English. You're in America. If you don't know it, learn it.
The negative stereotype that immigrants can't speak English is both harmful and untrue. According to the Census Bureau, 21% of people over the age of 5 speak another language other than English at home, and nearly half of immigrants speak English very well. Today, that number has risen to about 60% of immigrants who speak English very well. Granted, Spanish is the second highest language spoken in the U.S., but this stereotype also affects all immigrants who speak foreign languages. Native speakers of Arabic, Farsi, and other Asian and Indian tongues have had to make the conscious decision of when to stray from English. Some Latinos in particular feel the Trump administration's harsh rhetoric and tougher policies toward immigrants from Mexico and Central America have helped turn unwelcome glances into open hostility. By allowing the stereotype to continue, the English-only movement and other white supremacist ideals is progressing in their desire to divide people in the U.S. based on their language and background. It is causing open hostility and is suggesting that immigrants do not belong in the U.S., when in fact this country, as we know it today, does not have an official language and was built by immigrants. Another stereotype immigrants are perceived to have is that they have little to no education. This negative stereotype labels immigrants by implying that they cannot contribute to society. The stereotype suggests that people who are educated outside the U.S. do not receive the same quality education that we have in the U.S. The pervasiveness of the stereotype is highlighted in American politics. President Trump pledged to make an immigration system based on merit, implying that people immigrate to the U.S. because they are uneducated and unskilled. According to the Census Bureau, 16% of all immigrants who arrived since 2000 hold an advanced degree compared to 13% of the American population. The history of the United States is a tale about immigrants, but that does not mean it has been easy for immigrant families and their children. In 2011, HB 56 was passed in Alabama, requiring K-12 public schools to track immigration status and report their findings to the State Board of Education and state legislature. These laws impair children from obtaining access to education and is based on discrimination. Another negative, pervasive, and highly inaccurate stereotype assumes that undocumented immigrants do not pay taxes yet reap the benefits of social services. Undocumented immigrants using an individual tax identification number account for more than $11 billion in taxes each year. That's over 3 million immigrants who file taxes. The benefits of having an I-10 are not the same as an SSN, in that food stamps and certain housing benefits are only available to those with a social security number. Even more, allowing undocumented immigrants to work legally would increase their payments of state and federal taxes by $2 billion each year. In Oklahoma alone, immigrants paid over $84 million in state taxes this year. In addition, governmental policies dating back to the 1920s have deterred immigrants from coming to the U.S., and each year since, the number of immigrants has decreased. This has influenced the stereotype that exists today regarding immigrant contributions to the U.S. Another negative stereotype is that immigrants are stealing American jobs. This stereotype is extremely pervasive due to how it puts a negative stigma around immigrants in the workforce. Americans believe immigrants are migrating to America, ultimately taking all the job options. In reality, though, immigrants compose an increasingly large share of the U.S. labor force and a growing share of low-wage workers. Immigrants are 11% of all U.S. residents, but 14% of all workers and 20% of low-wage workers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found foreign-born workers who were more likely than native workers to be employed in service occupations, natural resources, construction and maintenance occupations, and production, transportation, and material moving occupations. Foreign-born workers are less likely than native-born to be employed in management, professional, sales, and office occupations. This stereotype comes from racist Americans who are against immigrants coming to their country. It is claimed that if immigrants come to America, they will take all the jobs, realistically jobs that said Americans have no interest in applying for. This stereotype exists today as a means to further racism against immigrant groups. Another negative stereotype that is placed on immigrant people is that they are all criminals or terrorists. This particular stereotype perpetuates immigrant people as violent and a threat to American society. Across multiple media platforms, you can find how pervasive the stereotype is. In a 2018 study by the Cato Institute, 1/3 of immigrant people in TV are associated with crime, and 11% were associated with incarceration. In reality, only less than 1% of people born outside the U.S. are incarcerated at the state or federal level. There have been several legislations passed since 1882 that denied access to certain groups of immigrants or deemed entry into the U.S. illegal unless designated by an immigration officer. This gave off the perception that people entering the United States without authorization as illegal meaning they already have a conflict with the law. The adjective illegal has a negative connotation that people can associate with crime. Anti-immigration rhetoric was heightened after the war on drugs, the war on crime, and the war on terror were declared, as many xenophobic Americans linked immigrant people to being associated with these crimes. Answers to concluding questions. Eurocentric, xenophobes, and conservative Americans benefit from the use of these stereotypes. They benefit specifically from the marginalization of immigrant people in an attempt to force them out of their country. They also benefit because they seek to retain the status quo, which illustrates white privilege, and do not want any factors to influence that status. Undocumented immigrants, first-generation immigrants, those whose race is other than Caucasian, and those in which English are a second language are limited by the stereotypes surrounding immigrants and their worth to America. Anyone who contradicts the picture of a white English-speaking American is treated as less than or deviant in some sense. People perceive members of the stereotype groups as different and therefore less than. Immigrants are less deserving of the same benefits that American-born people receive simply because of the journey they took to get here. The stereotypes cause fear, anger, and hostility towards immigrants. When people feel something, it alters the perception of the point of their attention. Emotion is the first step in creating and enduring biases that lead to active discrimination. The stereotypes help to encourage emotions of fear and anger. It directly influences emotion and perception of the individual. It is reinforced through Western culture and popular media. If people are validated by an outside source due to the way they feel of the stereotype, discrimination can occur. People speak derogatorily toward immigrant groups and cause harm on both an individual level and institutional level. Our country does not treat immigrants equally, and policies put in place by our government continue to deter legalization of immigrants. Recognizing biases is a primary role of social workers, as biases tend to lead a person's perception about a group of people. Understanding someone's bias can lead to a deeper understanding of the influence of a person's environments and systems on bias. Social workers can use that knowledge to better understand a client and appropriately make a plan of action to address them in a professional manner. One strategy is to use the social work profession and education received to start conversations with people who let their biases guide behavior. Using our role to facilitate learning is a key strategy here. Secondly, it is important for social workers to advocate beyond the individual level, to push for policies that can highlight equality and equity for all. Whether it is engaging in peaceful protest or using our power to speak in tandem with the oppressed to voice their needs, it is up to the social worker to provide a sense of hope on the individual and institutional levels. In conclusion, the pervasive stereotypes that immigrants can't speak English, lack education, don't pay taxes, take American jobs, and are criminals are beyond stereotypes. As depicted in this video, people are acting on these false perceptions of immigrant life. Government policy and popular media highlight that these stereotypes are embedded in American culture. The stereotypes are clearly invalid but proceed to affect the lives of all immigrants seeking a better life here. We hope that the information discussed today will help each and every one of you question how these biases play into your own lives.